Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie and welcome back to the Man Cave. Thought we would actually do an update to this room, which is not something I often do. One of the things which has been bothering me a little bit about this room, or for many years in fact, is that, I have no room to put posters or stuff like that. Which, the room looks the way it looks. However, I realized that these walls, which are essentially, it's a slanted ceiling, I got this idea in my head that, even though I don't really have like any regular walls that would work for posters, I figured that maybe I could use these slanted ceilings and put up some sort of mini posters. So I went over to IKEA and I picked up a bunch of these. One of IKEA's sort of cheapest frames, it's the Ribba, which is like one of their really classic ones. It's quite thick, which isn't really what I wanted to go for to begin with, but I ended up using this because it was cheap and I couldn't really find a good alternative, at least not at IKEA. Anyway, yada yada yada, it's hard to sort of explain what this is all about without actually telling you what it's about. Idea that I have is that I'm essentially going to put up some of these small frames in the slanted ceiling. You can see that I already started a bit here, and this is just because I wanted to get some idea of if this was, even possible or doable, or if it would look good before I started making this video. So essentially what I'm thinking, I bought a bunch of these frames. I actually bought like 12 of them, and the overall idea is that I'm essentially going to just mount these using these 90-degree hooks. So I'm just going to essentially slide them in from the side like this. And I'm just going to step back a little bit to give you an idea of just how the placement looks. Now I'm obviously standing a little bit down in the staircase here. But they will obviously be a bit slanted. But I don't know, I think this might look kind of cool. So you might be also wondering, like, what the hell am I supposed to have in these? What's the purpose? And I've essentially had a bunch of magazines for a while, like these old magazines, like the Crime Weekly, for example. Got one over here, sort of old vintage Swedish magazine from the 70s and 80s, like the Crime Mag, which sort of gradually turned into more of a pornographic magazine, sort of early Playboy stuff. Feels like I talk about this in every video. But I love the covers and I can't really display them in a good way. But then I thought, why not just put them in frames and sort of make use of this space in the ceiling, which I can't really do anything with. So that's essentially the plan. And like I said, I've already sort of started making some marks here and sort of putting these up. Now I wanted to share just some small thoughts with you concerning this, because I've come to a bit of a realization. Now when I'm putting this up, I'm using these metallic hooks, which are 90-degree hooks, which is obviously important. You can't use like the regular loopy-loop kind of stuff. You need a 90-degree hook to do this, and these are a bit larger and a bit more sort of on the heavy side in terms of what I wanted to use. I was a little bit anxious and a little bit worried about, making holes in the ceiling that are, this thick or this wide, in the event that, I wouldn't like the result, because then it would leave a bunch of really big holes in my ceiling. But I sort of put up the first one, and I think it looks good, so I think we're going to continue with this. I bought these at a typical hardware store. They were a bit more expensive than I wanted them to be. I think they cost roughly like 100 crowns per box, and there's essentially 30 per box. But here they are in case you want to know exactly what we're talking about. The frames, I bought 12 of them, and I think they're roughly like 39 Swedish crowns per frame. 12 in total, so you can sort of do the math there. So it's not an overly expensive project, but it does require a whole lot of drilling and a whole lot of measuring. I did a sort of plan over here. You can sort of see, oh god, I'm sort of feeling like that guy right now, more so than like that guy. But hopefully this will work out. And one of the things which I'm doing, which I think is a good tip for anyone who wants to do this, you can see that right up here, the top ones here, they don't really align perfectly. They're sort of a bit slanted, and they don't really follow like the line of the frame. Whereas down here, they are very sort of in line with how the frame, like the angle. The problem is that, I made these holes first, and I made these sort of just by hand, sort of aiming aiming, like going with the feel, and that's sort of why those are a bit off. But then I came up with this idea concerning how I'm, gonna be able to drill holes really smoothly, and more importantly, drilling them in a straight line, like a 90-degree angle, because that is very crucial. Because if you don't get a straight line down here at the bottom, you can see, I mean, just the fact that one of these is essentially angled a little bit downwards, that will essentially mean that the entire frame will sort of tilt to the left or to the right. So it's a very sort of delicate process, but I came up with this idea that, I just picked up this piece of wood from the garage, which is a 90-degree sort of plank, very thick plank. And then essentially what I do is that I place this against the ceiling. This is the floor, but use your imagination. And then I just take the drill, and I'm not going to drill for real. And then I place it in the ceiling, and then just use the board to ensure that I am, more like this rather than being like this. You sort of get the idea. So that's just a little tip for you if you're going to try to do this and you want to make sure to drill straight to get the proper 90-degree angle. So far, it feels like this is working for me, but I mean, it's gonna take a whole lot of time to put up all this, so I figured, we might as well sort of do like a time-lapse thing, because I can't really run this and do a commentary or whatever. So yeah, let's just go ahead and time-lapse it.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah.
So the first line of hooks is essentially up. This took longer than I expected. You can see that I've done quite a bit of measuring to ensure that I get everything where it's supposed to be. I think it's working pretty good. I mean, if you look at it from afar, you can see that they're fairly aligned. There are some issues. I realized that there's one over here which I placed a little bit too low. The whole angle issue with using the piece of wood which I showed you before, that is, I'd say that's pretty crucial, because it's very easy to sort of accidentally get the angle off of it. You can see just here I've sort of drilled it a bit slanted. That doesn't really matter. The whole thing is, as long as it's leveled correctly the other way, it should be fine. But anyway, I am dying to put up some magazines here just to try. So I got essentially, half of the frames left, but I'm not entirely sure what to do with those. So I'm gonna start by putting, I gotta see how this looks. Alright, so put up the first batch, and this is so cool, I gotta show you. It feels really strange seeing the finished product like this. I decided to go with some of these vintage Crime Weekly, Veckans Brott, VB Crime, what you want to call them, magazines, which are these classic Swedish crime magazines from the 70s and 80s, and sort of little by little they sort of escalated into becoming more and more of a pornographic magazine. So there's usually like like sort of Playboyish. It's usually like a fold-out, but I mean, for me, I just love the look of these covers, which I've mentioned several times before. I'm sorry about the glare, but I think you can sort of get an idea of what they look like. This last frame you can see is a bit tilted. I think I can probably fix that if I just put a little plastic or something on that to just make it go off like that. But yeah, overall I'm really loving the result. I'm just gonna step back and sort of show you. This is sort of me walking backwards down the stairs. So this is sort of what you're met with when you're walking up the stairs. So then you get a view of them when you're coming up the stairs, which I think is a nice little bonus. And then when you're up here, they're, just above eye level. Now, I can't really... I'm not really sure how to proceed, if I should make a second row, because that was my initial plan, to essentially make exactly the same, just one more row beneath. This will be quite tilted, depending on your height, obviously, but I mean, this is like I would say I'm pretty average height. So I mean, it would definitely be directly at eye level, but at the same time you would have to, you know, tilt down to see them, or at least tilt your head a little bit. I mean, these are definitely better leveled in terms of, you know, where you have them. But yeah, I mean, this turned out really nice, I think. And it's not like it's super easy to take them down, but I mean, it's definitely not hard, just to sort of show you what's going on. But essentially what you have to do is, pulling them out to the side, it doesn't really work because I don't have that much space on the sides, which I didn't really consider. I mean, pulling it out towards the other way, I'm just gonna hit the next frame. So that was a bit of a miscalculation, but I realized that it's actually quite easy to do anyway, because you just take this top knob and you just twist it, and you just have to twist it on one side, because then you can move it to the side and then you can just flip it out like that. And I also wanted to just show you how they look. I've essentially put these into the frame without any backing, so they're essentially just lying in here. I can just push them out with my hand from beneath. So I'm absolutely loving the end result. It was very important for me that these would be sort of interchangeable, that I could fairly easily take them down and replace them if I wanted to. And like I said, these are just laying towards the front based on gravity. I mean, if I push this in, you'll see that there's no backing on this. It's just a thin layer of clear plastic, which is an IKEA standard. So they're just laying there, and I should probably stop pushing it because they keep... Come on, fall back into place. Now the question is, do I make another row? God, it's really hard to tell. I mean, I'm all for symmetry, and I actually have a slanted ceiling on the other side. So another thought is to add some magazines there. I can't add magazines throughout the room because I have the staircase coming up here, and it's actually a really low ceiling when you're walking up, so you sort of have to bend down to avoid hitting your head. So I really don't want those extra centimeters of frames there. But I mean, still, I think I can essentially fit in 4 frames just to sort of be right above the shelf, which I think would look good. That is definitely another space which, you know, is fairly empty. Well, I'm gonna have to think a little bit about that, probably do some measuring. Alright, so it's a new day, but now I've actually finished, and I wanted to show you just what happened. And so here is the final presentation. Only one row on this side, or at least for the time being, and as you can see, I decided to actually go ahead and put up some frames on the other side of the room. So now I sort of have that symmetrical feel to the room. Starting right here, I got the frames on both sides. I do feel that, you know, leaving that space open, I don't know, it's a nice feeling because it sort of creates a sort of natural opening in a way, which I think, you know, having frames there feels a bit off. And also I really like the fact that I have 4 frames here, because this gave me the opportunity to put up these legendary 4 magazines which are part of a series. This is the Flashback magazines. Flashback was a Swedish, or well, it is a Swedish internet forum, which sort of started out back in the 90s, I believe, and it sort of stayed on the internet and been a very sort of central part of Swedish internet history. And it's sort of, today it's like the internet forum, you know, whenever something happens, you know, revolving crime, or somebody gets killed, you know, the police finds a body somewhere, you go to Flashback and you search for, you know, murder wherever, and there will usually be a forum thread on it, and like within a week or so you will probably have the info surrounding like who did it, who got killed, and like, so it's a very sort of, I don't know if I would say illegal, but very sort of free speech empowering kind of place. And it's also like, you know, full of filth and stuff like that. It's all in Swedish, so for any international viewer of this video, it won't really help you. But the point of the matter, what I'm coming to, is that this online forum sort of started as a paper magazine, and they only came out with 4 issues, and these are those issues. So this is flashback number 1, and flashback number 2, number 3, and then there was a joint 4/5 number, which is this 4th one. So that's all the magazines they issued, and these are original copies, which are quite rare. They are valued roughly as, I think the first one is maybe 150 euro or so. The other are more like maybe 100 euro thereabouts. But so, I mean, it's quite collectible magazines these days, and they were fairly limited back in the day. So I'm really happy that I found a place for this. And this is also, part of, like, it's nice that I only have 4 frames, because I just have 4 of those magazines. So they really sort of create a nice little section on their own, which I like. Plus, when I was doing this, I shouldn't be mentioning this, but when I was doing this, I actually made a mistake in measuring. So this frame, all of these frames are essentially 0.5 centimeter too far to that side. They're still, within the spacing, everything's correct, but, I made the mistake of measuring like these center bolts were going to be like 18.5 centimeters, but I miscalculated and put them 18 centimeters apart, which means that, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is roughly 2 or 3 centimeters off. Meaning, like, if you stand and look across like this, they're not actually symmetrical, which nobody will ever notice. But if I walk down the stairs and you just look at the frame edge right there, you might be able to make out that it's not actually aligned with the other side of the room. I don't even know if you can tell from this angle. Yeah, almost not. But in any case, that is essentially it. Sorry that I'm dragging out talking about this. If you don't feel that you get enough Disc Junkie content, be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I go by discjunkietv, and I post a lot more stuff there about movies and film collecting and yada 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 on a daily basis. Thank you very much for watching, and as usual, hope to see you all next time.